And tonight, would you now please help us welcome our speaker for this evening from the Kingston Saturday Night Group out of Kingston, Rhode Island, John M.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name's John.
Hi, John.
Thank you, Joey, for having me speak tonight in the group. I appreciate it. I consider it a privilege and an honor to speak in Alcoholics Anonymous and to do anything in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because Alcoholics Anonymous rediscovered my love for God through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for that, I'm forever grateful. And it literally changed my life. God changed my life. And I can make that point blank declaration to all of you in this room. That God did something miraculous in my life that literally changed my whole life. Took me from this old life that I had, and he put me over here and uprooted my roots. If you use the potted plant, the tree analogy, right, you can see it in our basic text in the third step. And he gave me new soil. My roots grasp new soil now. And for that, I'll be forever grateful. There's nothing that I could do to ever give my gratitude for Alcoholics Anonymous to give me that relationship. And all I do is I just try to give this thing back, and I just keep trying to go through the 12 steps and have a deeper understanding of God and let him work more in my life. And right now, I did a 4th step that lasted about a year and a half, just because I'm lazy and I wasn't that diligent, and my sponsor told me to do, like I've done in the past. I've done many different, 4 steps, many different ways. Hyannis, sub-Hyannis, Joe and Charlie tape. I did a packet, my first one. All it did was just bring me closer to God, but I had a similar methodology of like pray before God, remove any sort of thing that blocks me from you. I'm going to be as honest, as fearless, and as thorough as you would have me be. Your words, not mine, you write for me. Holy Ghost, come down, you write in and through me. And, unfortunately, I didn't pick like a time to do it. It was just like some weeks, I wouldn't do it for like 2 or 3 weeks. But it went the way it was supposed to. I have to trust God. I have to trust his providence. And what I've gotten from sharing that 5th step with my sponsor, it took me about 12 to 14 hours, 12 hours maybe, at his house in Middletown, Rhode Island. And what I got from this is that I'm not better. I'm not cured. That there are things that I'm not proud of that I do almost a decade sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, professing to live a spiritual life to you. I profess that my life is all about God and that he changed my life, but the reality is that some of the shit on there, it looks like I should be locked up in Butler. Crazy. Like when I was like reading it, I'm like, wow, I should be in Butler right now. This is crazy. And it's not from an attitude of despair or anything. It's just a realist, right? God loves the humble. He loves the meek at heart. He loves the meek. That's what we do in this. That's the principle in that 5th step. The way that I see it, 4 and 5, is really humility, right? Humbleness. It takes a lot, and really a true testament to that abandonment in the 3rd step. God, I don't even know what you are at this point, but I give you my all, everything. And how I'm going to show that indebtedness to you is I'm going to write all my resentments, all my fears, and all my sex conduct. I'm going to withhold nothing. And that's the only key. The methodology doesn't matter. Right? I've just learned that long enough, doing it many different ways. It doesn't matter, right? Because I had a spiritual experience doing a packet with half the stuff wasn't even in the book. My first go around, 6 months sober. And I experienced the Lord in depth when I left my sponsor's house, maybe 4 or 5 sponsors ago, of his house in Man Ave in Newport, Rhode Island. I saw the hue of the sky. It was a beautiful purple. It was over the police station. And I just felt the nearness of my Creator. I was literally living the 5th step promises, right? Our fears will fall from us. I felt that. I had no lump in my throat anymore. I knew the bad stuff that I'd done had been forgiven, that he loved me unconditionally, that I had a God personal to me that loved me unconditionally. And I've had different experiences with it, right? That was the first experience. The last, say, 3 or 4, it's more real. You can't escape from it anymore. This is stuff that I'm doing sober now. I can't hide behind the facade of alcohol anymore. There's no excuse anymore. I love playing the victim role. I'm really good at that. I look back at my past and I can blame everybody except me. There's a person in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's called Big Book Bob. He's from Woonsocket. He moved to Narragansett about probably 7, 8 years ago. He's heard 2 of my fifth steps, and he said it before. He said, we can't stay sober playing the victim role in Alcoholics Anonymous. Man, that hit me when I heard that. And if you've written before and you've shared that before, right? You've written in the 4th step and you've shared in 5, you understand that. Because when I get to the 4th column of the turnarounds, right, I can't run from it anymore. The truth is, it's on paper, black and white. Where was I selfish? What do I want from the scene? Where was I dishonest? What was the delusion I was living under? Not the other person. Not the dude that I had this immense resentment with that I blamed for everything. What was my delusional thinking in that scenario? Self-seeking, where was my selfish actions? What were the actions that I did? Fear. You know, what am I afraid of? What am I fearful of? And each and every time I write, it's a different thing. You know, the first time it was just the closeness to God. I think the second and third time I wrote a 5th step, it was just knowing myself better and being like, wow, there's a lot of things I have to work on that God needs, let me correct that God needs to remove from me. And I need to have the willingness to let God remove from me. The one time before this, about 4 years ago, I did a massive 4th step before I got married to my wife that I met at Alcoholics Anonymous. I actually met her at a young people's committee. And, you know, what I got from that was the selfish actions that manifested really in column 3, believe it or not. You know, what did it affect? Where did it manifest? Because at that point in the methodology, my sponsor had me write out that 3rd column. You know, the self-esteem, my ambition, security, what I want, what I need from the scene. And it just was like, wow, self-centeredness, like, it came to life. This last time it was in the 4th column, it was fear. What came to life to me is, and this book can come to life, for me at least, is like, wow, this is literally, I'm living this right now. 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking. Fear drives me, it's my motivator, it's the catalyst. What I've realized is that, and this is when we progress into the spiritual life. I have to do this in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm a real alcoholic, I got no choice. There's no middle of the road solution. That's what the book tells me. And I believe that full-heartedly. I have to keep growing. We hear the old timers, and I hated a lot of the cliches, but you can see the truth in them the further you get on in sobriety. Grow or go. We're talking about the spiritual life here, right? Am I willing to go deeper? Am I willing to see, Christ says, be in the world, but not of it. Am I willing to relinquish the world and live internally, like basically as a hermit internally? That's the way I view it now, for me. And I have to grow towards that. And I have to keep letting God work on me. Remove these things from my life that block me from you, Lord. And I spent a lot of time just on 4 and 5. It's just current what's going on right now. I'm starting to write a little bit of the amends that I have to do, some outstanding ones and stuff that came up. And I'm just sharing from you where I'm at right now. You know, there's been a long road up to this point. And I just want to tell you, like, I'm in the middle of it with you. If you're in here right now and you're writing a 4th step, and you're just like, man, this is so tough. This is so difficult. Why do they have me do this? This is scary. I don't want to look back at all this sex conduct and everybody that I hurt and my selfish actions with this. I don't want to look at all these fears that I have. Well, guess what? I've been with you. I'm with you in that. I've done it all. I had a spiritual experience, actually not sharing. I heard a fifth step maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And what I got from that was that I knew the nearness of my Creator, and it didn't matter. It was almost like my first one that I did, right? Just hearing that, hearing the fifth step and the honesty and the brutality of it all, and just being like, God loves us, man. It doesn't matter about our past. And we can sit here and we can see God through created things. And we're at the beach, and I could see God and beautiful sunshine and the sand on the beach and the sand dunes moving in the wind. And for me, I see the hand of God and his beauty and his creation. And I just sat and I was just like, man, he loves us so much. Because he took an alcoholic like me who was absolutely destitute internally, that I would completely get over on you. I would manipulate you. I would lie to you. I'd lie to get anything that I wanted. I'd cheat. This was with the drink. This was without the drink, right? Never mind all the stuff I did when I was drinking, because I don't have control over the amount I take once I put it in my body. So bets are off. Crazy John's coming out. I'm coming out and I'm just doing me. Because I end up in a blackout, whether I want to or not. Brown out sometimes. Sometimes it's snapshots when I'm drinking. But the reality is that I can count on my hands the amount of times that I've had a social drink, and it's usually under the influence of some sort of heavy narcotic or drug, or something to slow me down. Because that's who I am. That's just me when I drink. I put 1 or 2 in me. It's kind of like, I haven't shared this analogy in a while. Must be God. This is funny. It's like you put 1 or 2 in you. It's like the point of no return. It's like, you ever watch Back to the Future? And Doc's like, Marty, you can't go past 80 or you're gonna, the flux capacitor is gonna, whatever it is. And with the big white hair, and he's like, okay, point of no return, got it. That was it for me. It's like 1 or 2, boom. I'm blacked out. I'm at Dockside. I'm in Newport. I'm trying to fight my friends from back in the day because they did something that pissed me off in a blackout. And all these sad consequences of that drinking, right? We wake up. It's like, I forget where it is. I think it's in A Vision for You where it says we have that terror, bewilderment, frustration, the 4 horsemen. I think it's in there. I could be wrong. Wake up, one eye, text. What did I do last night? Who did I hurt? Who did I piss off? That type of stuff actually got me into Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. It wasn't like, the mechanics of the big book, like, body allergy, phenomenon of craving. It was like, wow, I just ended up in the South Kingston Police Department again with 4 charges on me, or 3 charges on me, in a blackout, blood all over me. How did this happen? And I'm in pain. And I'm 19 years old, and I'm about to go to school. I'm about to start college, and I'm a high school dropout, and I'm about to start college. It's like, I got my stuff together now, I think. And I wake up in a blackout, and there's blood all over me. I think I killed somebody in a car crash, or I got into a fight, and I smashed someone's head across the paper. I didn't know what happened. And then the bails bondsman's my fourth grade teacher at a parochial school, and she's like, wow, I haven't seen you in however long. John, I'm not going to share my last name. John, wow, you've seen better days, huh? The incomprehensible demoralization. And it's not just one episode for me. It's just, I can chop it up with the best of them. You want to share war story for war story? We can do that. I can do that. And it's not to be like, it's just like, I get it. Like, we're not so different here. No matter our background, race, color, creed, whatever it is. The cement that binds us, I think it's in There's a Solution, I think it's 17, right? There's this common cement that binds us, right? And that's alcoholism. It's the glue that holds us together. Despite whatever our past is, no matter what it is, that's the glue. That's the common peril that we share. The peril. I'm in insurance. It's called an occurrence, a peril, right? An act of God. Usually it's a disaster. And that was what my life was like, drinking. It was a disaster. Sober or not sober too, by the way. It didn't matter if I was drinking or not. And I always had that phenomenon of craving. Once I put booze in my body, I couldn't stop. And that's what brought me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I experienced it from when I started drinking when I was 16. The first drunk I had, it was a blackout. My buddy Rob came over to the house. We stole some Tanqueray in my parents' liquor cabinet, and he mixed it up. I didn't know what to do, and he mixed it up. Or might have been 15. And we were freshmen at a local high school, and he came by and he mixed up that Tanqueray, and it went down the first glass. I started feeling warm. This time I was like, oh, let's have another. Started feeling warmer. And then it was like third, fourth glass, I blacked out. And I started, blacking in and out. We were on my mom's roof and smoking weed and whatever. And, I liked the effect produced by alcohol after that. Because what I felt in that moment was that all the fears that I felt previous, they were completely wiped away. I felt nothing. It was utter nothingness. And that's what I chased, whether willingly or unwillingly. That's where I went to. Whether I wanted to or not. But I loved it because it was nothing. It was absolute, no fear, no scared little John anymore. I could fight the world and get away with it. This is how my delusional brain thought. And it didn't work out. Obviously, I'm here. We don't come to Alcoholics Anonymous, or I didn't come to Alcoholics Anonymous because it was like, not a good idea, but I was having a good time. Like, things were all good. So then I come to AA. Usually, most people come to AA. I came to AA at my deepest, darkest moment of most pain and suffering. And, I've been in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous, just to fast forward a little bit. The common thread is that I couldn't even stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I started coming when I was 18. I moved down to Florida. I was a juvenile delinquent. I got kicked out of my dad's house. I got arrested in Florida. I had to go to a rehab, and that was like the last stop before jail. And it was Recovery Resources, and I think it was North Palm Beach, Florida, or Lake Park, Florida. And, I got exposed to Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew Alcoholics Anonymous existed. My uncle had been sober in AA for like 40 years, alcoholism all over my family. I don't know if that made me an alcoholic or not. It's none of my business. All I know is that when I drink, I can't stop, and then I want to stay stopped, but I can't. So I'm in the rehab, and I'm like, all right, man, I just got to beat these charges. It's like, I just got to get this. I dropped out of high school. It's like, I got to beat this thing. I kind of want to stop for the meantime. For at least 2 years, I got to stop. And I meant it. I meant business. But did you hear that? For 2 years. I had a lurking notion. And I was doing the deal in AA, or at least I thought. I was going to meetings. Might have even gotten a job. I got this cool sponsor. He drove like a really flashy car. He had like a crazy story. He was mixing up hooch and jails. And I was like, this guy's crazy. I like this guy. And I don't know if I ever talked to him after one more meeting with him, like one-on-one. I probably didn't pick up his call anymore. But then, I got out, and then, I slacked on some meetings, and I started drinking again, and then I went back to the rehab, and inpatient, then outpatient. I was about 18 at the time, senior in high school, and I couldn't rest. I look back on it now, and I couldn't rest easy in my skin. There was something deep down within me, this malady, this spiritual malady that nothing could calm it. Nothing in the world could calm it. Now, if you asked me back then, I wouldn't have said that. I wouldn't have even known how to describe it. It was just, I was restless, I was restless, irritable, and discontented, as our book says it. And I was eating quercetin pills. I was tripping out with the in front of the counselors. I was doing anything to make me feel better. Anything to get me out of myself that I thought I could get away with. And then someone comes in with a bottle of vodka and I don't even think twice about it. I don't think like, wow, man, I might violate and go away for at least a year or two. Who knows? That didn't even crowd my mind. I'd been sober, quote unquote, other than the quercetin, tripping out, for, maybe a month or two. And I was going to meetings. I was like trying to do everything that I could. And spiritual stuff, none of that. And someone comes in with a bottle of vodka and I don't even think twice. I think, vodka? I like vodka. Let's drink. And I drank it. It was so desperate and like pitiful. They got the breathalyzer out because someone snitched us out. Well, good. I mean, I'm glad they did. They were in a halfway house. People were trying to be sober. And I went to my car. It was my dad's Pathfinder at the time. I had the canister of pennies, and I heard something that if you stuff pennies in your mouth, it skews the breathalyzer. And so I shoved a bunch of pennies in my mouth. And like this counselor was like a heroin addict, sober like 35 years from like Philly. He's like, he got that Philly accent. He's like, what are you doing? You're trying to stuff this in your mouth? So that shit's not gonna work. And I had like pennies falling out of my mouth. Like it was pitiful. I didn't want to go to jail. But I violated, and then I ended up in a abandoned building that night, snorting coke all night with this kid, and I was just like, man, my life's over. My probation officer didn't violate me, but it was like the last straw, so I got flown up to the Phoenix house on Rhode Island, and that was back in 2004. Phoenix house was a little different back then. It was a lot of dudes maxing out on bids in the ACI, trying to get out that had, so like dudes doing 15-year stretches, going there to try to like get out of jail early. It was a lot of stuff like that. So it was the last straw. It was like you were a hopeless alcoholic or there's some serious legal troubles in your future or in your current state. And so I went there and she didn't violate me. And I left there when my probation got up, and I had this thought of like, if I stay here, I might have a better life. And I came there, my buddy Nick was waiting with a 6-pack, and I drank it leaving the Lad Center in Exeter at Phoenix House, smoking a bowl and drinking a 6-pack. That was me, man. After all the trouble, all the legal woes, it's, that malady has got to be quenched somehow. It's got to be quenched. See, for the real alcoholic, there's only two solutions. It's alcohol or there's God. There's no in between. And here's the thing in Alcoholics Anonymous that I learned. I can't live dirty in Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't. I'll be drinking in no time. I've seen it happen time and time again to people. It happened to me. I think I'm running game in Alcoholics Anonymous. I think I can get away with certain things. I mean, if I'm the real deal. But there's some people that aren't real alcoholics in Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's okay. They might be able to get away with it. The real alcoholic, phenomenon of craving, body allergy, mental obsession, spiritual malady, can't get away with it. I'll be drinking in no time. Because I got to be clean. I got to be clean. That's what I got. That's what my experience shows me in AA. I got to be clean. Because it's either drinking or working on a relationship with God. That's it. And working towards that. Just to fast forward, listen, I have countless episodes of wanting to stay stopped, but I can't after a brief period of sobriety. Going to AA for a couple of weeks drinking. I remember I got beat down at a fraternity up in Plymouth. I got into college then. I was a high school dropout, but I went part-time, and they let me in. And basically, within a month, another incomprehensible demoralization. I got beat down at a fraternity, and I had a white light experience. God came to me. I believe it was my guardian angel came to me and basically spoke in my heart. And it was nothing audible. It was basically, you keep going like this, you're gonna die. Whether it's tomorrow in a bar fight or 60 years down the line from cirrhosis of the liver, you will die from alcoholism. And I turned my back on God again. I lived a lot like Bill Wilson did in his story, right? He talks about being in Winchester Cathedral, much moved. He had a spiritual experience. And but he got blotted out by worldly clamors, and that was the same thing for me. Literally, God came to me when I was 19 saying, "You got to stop this." And I'm like, "Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll do that, but I'm not willing to really do it." And I turned my back on God, and then I'm drinking within a month. Going to meetings every day, wanting to say stop, can't pull it off. Someone comes in with a 6-pack of Heineken. They didn't know I was sober. It was a college party upstairs at my house off 190 Main, and I didn't even think about it. Once again, mental blank spot. I saw the suds dripping from the Heineken. I was like, "Ooh, I like Heineken." It's like I'm like a trained monkey. It's just like I don't even think. It's like, well, Heineken. Ooh, I like Heineken. Ooh, I like vodka. Ooh, I like. It's like I've been sober I've been going to meetings of AA. I don't even think about drinking again. Like, I must be insane. I have to be insane. You have to be insane. And guess what? That's the definition of insanity that Alcoholics Anonymous defines it as. Insanity is, after a brief period of sobriety, wanting to stay stop and not being able to pull it off. And then drinking because of a trivial reason or excuse, or not even seeing the drink come through, and you just drink. That's insane. I have to be insane to do that based on my track record. I have to be insane. And there's no hope for that. If you've experienced that the way I've experienced it, and the first 100 men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous experienced it, there's no hope for that. It's a hopeless scenario. And for me, the buildup was all the hopelessness was all the times of that mental obsession happening. Wanting to stay stop, going to AA, thinking I got it this time, and then drinking after a month or two. And that happened time and time again. And it builds up and you're like, wow, I can't even stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. What is wrong with me? And the despair is unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life before. Because what's after AA? It's the last house on the block, quote unquote. That's what the old timers say. It's the last house on the block. So I'm screwed. What am I doing after this? That's hopelessness. Hopelessness is when I was sober, it was the last time for my last relapse, God willing, if the Lord wills it. And I knew I was drinking when I went to that meeting off Man Ave, the Monday night Stone Mill meeting in Newport, Rhode Island. And I knew I was going to Aquidneck Liquors at that meeting. I was sitting in the meeting and I was like this, and I was like shaking, and I was like, I'm going to Aquidneck Liquors. And I went to Aquidneck Liquors, and I'd been sober about 3 months of that time, and I drank those beers like I'd been on a desert island. Now, why would I do that? I'd been detoxed from alcohol for 3 months. Why would I do that? Why did I have to guzzle like 4 of them in a row and feel right? It's because of the spiritual malady. So I wasn't treating my alcoholism sober. And I got what I got. And I drank again. And it brought me to a place of, and that was around 2011, it brought me to a place of complete and utter demoralization. And I felt terrible. And I was utterly hopeless. I'd wake up off my apartment. I'd wake up in my apartment in Middletown, and I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. It was the same thing. It felt like Groundhog Day. Bill Murray on Groundhog Day. It was the same thing over and over and over again. He tries to kill himself because he wants to get out of it. Like literally it felt like that for me. I couldn't look at myself in the face. Did the same thing again this weekend. Couldn't draw a sober breath from Friday to like Sunday night. Oh, what, like another bender, another thing I did. It's just like, why is life worth living? I remember driving on 138 being like, would anybody really care if I veered into this Jersey barrier? That's how I felt. Now, I couldn't articulate at the time, but that's how I felt. And I could feel the wheel veering over a little bit. Because I'm a coward. I couldn't do it outright. In the doctor's opinion, they talk about that men, rather than continue to fight, makes a supreme sacrifice. I was almost there. And what happened was on July 4th, 2012, I went to Block Island on my buddy Nick's boat with his father and my buddy Marcus. And I was drinking Jack all day and it was an utter blackout. And I woke up and it was another incomprehensible demoralization. I almost drowned in Old Harbor with all my clothes on. I was swimming around looking for his boat on his mooring for 2 hours after I got kicked out of Kittens, or I left Kittens or whatever. And, some guy saved my life. He picked me up and put me in a dinghy and saved my life. I don't remember any of this. He came in the morning and he said, "Oh, here's your shoe." It was like a Nike Air Max. He's like, "Here's your shoe." I'm like, "Oh man, what happened?" He's like, "Dude, you almost died. You were gasping for water. You're swimming around with all your clothes on in Old Harbor, and I saved your life." Another thing, there's just add that to the list, but it hit me differently this time. I felt utter shame and just felt like I didn't deserve to live, and I was like, I literally lived what Bill talked about. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. Alcohol was my master. I felt that way. And I lost my phone, I lost my keys, but I had a 30-pack. And I had the thought of, I should go to AA. Man. But I was at step one at that point, in my heart, and I didn't even realize it. I had admitted at that point on that boat to my innermost self that I was truly alcoholic. I was never going to be a normal drinker. I was never going to be able to figure it out. There was nothing. It was utterly hopeless for me. It was sad. I was sad in that moment, but I drank and I lived that way for 3 more months. 3 more months until God separated me from alcohol on October 8th, 2012. And I didn't plan on it. He just separated me. I was drinking at my buddy Eddie's house for his sister's 30th birthday in Teftil, and I just remember downing. I was the best beer pong game of my life, Beirut game of my life, and I went to college at a party school. That was like all I did was play Beirut, and I literally, it's fitting. I went out like that. We won like 12 games in a row, and last thing I remember, my buddy Biff had a bottle of dark liquor, and I was chugging it, and I ended up across town somehow. I got kicked out of this girl's house. I broke into a dude's house, not benevolent. Well, obviously I broke into his house, but I was in a blackout. I was just trying to take a nap. I didn't know where I was, and I woke up with 2 guns in my face. It was the South Kingston Police Department, and there we go. He took pity on me, didn't press charges on me, but I had an intervention from the cop. He did his cop thing, were you a drug dealer, were you a drug at, all these things. But he got real with me and he said, "Listen, I have a brother who suffers from what you suffer from." I'm like, "What do I suffer?" He's like, "You might be an alcoholic." And I started crying and it hit me. It's like, normal people don't drink like that. And it seared my heart. I can't really describe it any other way. It hit me at a level internally. And I didn't know where my car was. I found my car. It was obviously parked at Eddie's house. I drove it back to Middletown. I slept for like 24 hours. I blew my dad off for a URI football game, and they came looking for me, my mom and my dad, and they've been really concerned about drinking. Throughout my whole career of drinking, they knew all about it. And the debauchery, obviously, you get arrested when you're like a juvenile. They know all about it. And they had an intervention with me. 2 interventions, 2 separate instances, in less than a, say, 48-hour period. And they didn't even know what happened the night, or 2 nights before, or a night before, whatever it was. If that's not the hand of God, I don't know what is. It was literally, I couldn't fail even if I wanted to. I could not fail. And my mom sat there and she was crying, and she was like, "John, you're killing me, and you're killing yourself." And she was crying. She's like, "I just don't want you to die." And I had no hope that I could be sober at that point. But that's the key. Hopelessness. Any good big book step study sponsor that brings you through this will show you the underlying thread of alcoholism, really the first 55 pages. It's hopelessness. You can see it all over the book, right? That's where God can work with that. Because there's no ego left. The ego's grinded into dust. It doesn't exist anymore. Self-centeredness is eroded. It's like dust on a beach. It doesn't exist anymore. God can blow it away, and you're like, okay, I'm willing. Let's do it now after all this pain. But the problem is some people die before that happens. Or other things happen, right? They turn their back on God, just like I did 100 million times. Turn my back on God, turn my back on God. Just like I did at school when I got beat down in that fraternity. At that point, it was about 7 years prior to that, 8 years prior to that. And what I did was I just went back to AA, even though I didn't think it would work. But I was willing at that point. I was willing to do anything. I haven't shared this in a while. It's funny what comes to you when you're up here. And if you told me to do cartwheels, I would have done it. It sounds so dumb and so lame, but it was like that type of deal. Like whatever you say, stand on your head, I would have done it. It didn't matter. Anything to not live the life that I was living. But how many people, when you suggest God, they're like, whoa, I can't do that. I'll do anything but that. Because I come into AA, and a lot of people come into AA with a lot of misconceptions about what God is, who God is, etc. Formed by really sinful behavior, really, when it comes down to it. People don't want to acknowledge that, or defects that manifest. And we get these crazy ideas of like, well, he doesn't love me because of this, X, Y, Z, all these things, right? It's really my misinformation based on my experience, based on God. I got to wipe that away. And that's what he did for me. And what happened was a man got placed in my life. I don't really have time to get into the story, but it was actually a miraculous event. And we sat down and we went through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous at his house. Just the act of him inviting me over his house, the selflessness of this man, telling me to come on a Tuesday night at 7:30 o'clock at his apartment in Man Ave, Newport, was just alone. Like, wow. Like, it's not a lot of people wanted to be around me at that point. And what we did was we just read the book. I did a 4-step. I shared a little bit about that 5th step. I banded myself to God as I understood God. I didn't even know what that meant at that time, but I was willing. I was willing to just say the words and do the deal in here. I was willing to cultivate a prayer life while I was writing. I wrote, I shared that 5th step. I felt like a new man, but I sat down there and I did 6 and 7, put the book on the shelf like it told us to do. And I thought if the stones were properly in place, had I done it all properly, and was the first 5 steps done satisfactory? Yes. And then we took the 4-step list, or basically at that point I wrote an 8-step list, and I started making amends. And I've made a lot of amends, face-to-face, symbolic, etc. Countless, I can't even tell you the amount. 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, I don't even know. I hurt a lot of people though, and I can tell you one thing, I saw the face of God in those amends. Just the humility, like God, like I said before, God loves the humble, he loves the repentant. He loves the repentant sinner. And that's what we do in AA. It's like, okay, like I'm so, like I go to someone, I was wrong, how do I make this right? And I fall through how to make it right. And I do that, during that natural course of action. I might have been a thief before, but if I pay that money back, that characteristic of thievery falls from me. And I'm no longer a thief anymore. I'm actually a virtuous man that pays all his debts back. The opposite virtue happens. The virtue happens, and I start living this life of God, the way he's always wanted me to live. Wow, I made all these amends, and I attempted to make these amends to these ex-girlfriends that I had. And it just so happens that God put a woman in my life, that we have a happy marriage today. And it's generally not disordered. Even though we're human beings, we have bumps along the road. And we've been faithful in that marriage for the last 4 years. Our family's growing. We have three kids. I find a direct correlation in that. I'll share you this one story and then I'll wrap up a little bit. anniversary tonight, I believe, right? Yeah. I'll tell you the power of the amends. Because all that matters in Alcoholics Anonymous is our experience. So I tried to attempt to make an amends to an ex-girlfriend. I made a symbolic amends to her mom. It was up in college, up in New Hampshire. And then I went to my buddy Norm's. I made a face-to-face amends to him. I made an amends to an employer that I stole money from. I might have done another amends, or attempted to do another amends, and then I came back. And that girl at the time is now my wife. We flew out to Iowa about a week after for her one of her best friends was getting married in Iowa. And I was like open and willing and like, let's go. And I don't know, I'd never been to Iowa before. She'd already gone. I took the flight over. I had a spiritual experience driving there. It was off the back of many amends that I'd done in like a month or two process, particularly those ones I did at school. And I, like that in and of itself, like I'm crying, I'm by myself, I'm looking at the cornfields, absolutely beautiful, it's majestic. I've never been to the Midwest before. And I'm just like, I felt the nearness of my Creator, and I knew that He loved me unconditionally. Once again, it's that same common thread. So I go, and it's not about me, and I try to make it not about me because I have a really hard time with that. I always want to make things about me, no matter what the event is. It could be your wedding. I'm going to make it about me. Usually that's just how I operate, but this time I didn't. It was how I could be of service, and I was of service to my soon-to-be wife. I didn't even realize it at the time. And I fly back, and I'm solo. She stays out there, and I take the Southwest flight. If you know about Southwest, at least at this time period, you couldn't have assigned seats. So I walk in, and I'm one of the last people walking in, and there's like a rather large gentleman, and it's just a middle seat, and then this lady right here. I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna sit right there. Doesn't look that comfortable, but you know what? It's a short flight. What do? I bring out my big book. It's the book I had, and I get very nervous on flights. I pray so much, and like I need to read. It gets me out of myself too. So I grab it, and this gentleman over to the left was looking, and he's like, wow, big book. He's like, I'm in Alateen. And I have no idea about Alateen. We start talking. He's literally sitting right here. Now, meanwhile, there's a lady right here. And we're having this conversation. That was cool in and of itself, but I look over and she's crying. And I'm like, man, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Are you okay, man? She's like, yeah, I am. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've been sober 2 weeks. I planned on drinking on this flight 3 days ago. But just from that conversation, in this chain of events, like, I'm not drinking. What? So what do? Like, I was able to be helpful. We went through, there's a solution on the plane. We prayed. We asked God to remove the obsession to drink and do drugs. She didn't drink. These things are not mere coincidences. These things are miracles that happen in our life. The reality is that I'm shut off to it most of the time. It just so happened at that point, I'd been off the back of my amends, and God opened me up to this. To anything that happened in my life. And I wasn't scared of what people would think about reading that book on the plane. Nothing. And what did He do? It's always the common thread. Indebtedness to Him and servitude to His adopted kids on this earth. And that's what He had me do. He had me be a service in that moment. And that's what my life's been, is a life of servitude and Alcoholics Anonymous. I try to live 10 and 11, 12 every day to the best of my ability, and I gave my life away the first 5 years to this work completely with guys, working 2 guys at a time. I probably had 90, 100 sponsees throughout the years. Most of them didn't stay sober, but guess what? I'm not in the results business. That's up to God. All I can do is just suit up and show up and give my life to this work and give my life to God. And that's what He's done for me. And just to fast forward, I'll end with this, I promise. I got married in sobriety. I have a wife in sobriety. We have a growing family. I have 3 kids, 3 and under. It's a madhouse, but it's and that's what my life is revolved around. I got reverted back to my faith of origin. I have a serious spiritual discipline in that religion. And if you told me 5 years ago I would have that, I would have been like, 10 years ago, I'd be like, you're crazy. There's no way. But I was open to God. and where His Spirit wanted me to go. What I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is just don't turn your back on them. See, here's the thing. Knock and it will open. Ask and He will provide. He always does. And that's what He's done in my life. He took someone who is a hopeless alcoholic and literally transformed my life, like I said, rerouted me, put my roots in new soil. And He can do that for you too. He can do that for anybody in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're all His children. And He loves us all unconditionally, whether you feel that or not. Believe it because I believe it. Thank you.